If you really want to understand critical race theory, you have to go back in time.
Their mission was to reestablish white domination, and they did that by monitoring every book in every classroom in the South.
From the African American Policy Forum, I'm your host, Kimberly Crenshaw. This is the United States of Amnesia, a mini-series explaining what CRT really is and what our reaction to it says about America's future. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. We'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I know you say that your values have not changed, so then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made.
Welcome back to Nationally. In this limited election series podcast by Immigrantly Media, we're going to discuss issues that matter to some of the most overlooked demographic groups in the U.S. As election season fast approaches, we'll examine key moments which will paint a clear picture of what to expect come November. We are your host, independent journalist Juan Diego Ramirez.
And I'm Nationally's producer and reporter, Sofia Sanchez, stepping in for Sarah this week.
Welcome back, Sofia. We missed you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the swing state of Pennsylvania hosted the first and long-awaited presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump on Tuesday night.
Yes, it was also the first time the two candidates had ever met.
But they got comfortable pretty quickly, throwing out lies, criticisms, and facts in each other's faces. It was wild.
Yeah, in some ways, it was the same old with Trump name-calling immigrants, using racism to fearmonger, and touting his past presidential performance as a sinless success.
Right, and Kamala, as per usual, tried to define herself by stating that she was not Biden and that she was not Trump. But we did get some clarity on some of her flip-flopping policy stances, like fracking, for example.
Yes, and as much as there was predictability, there was also a lot that was not on my bingo card, Juan Diego. And I'm speaking quite literally, since many of my friends tried to anticipate what the two candidates would say during the debate by creating their own cards.
Yeah, I saw the Washington Post made one. The LA Times made another one.
Yeah, so many publications created some for people to use. And because today's politics can be laughable, some of the spaces on the cards are sometimes meme too, in predictable Gen Z fashion. And so as a token Gen Z on the Nationally team, but not really because we're all kind of diversity hires here at Immigrantly Media. But I thought we could break down the debate using one of these bingo cards.
Okay, yes, I'm intrigued. As a millennial, please, let's do this.
Bingo is not for old people anymore. So in this episode, we're inviting Ariyon Dailey, social producer at Reckon News, to help us break down the debate. Reckon News is one of the publications that made their own debate-themed bingo card. And Ariyon is a fellow Gen Zer journalist who was using the bingo card to stay engaged while watching the debate.
Sounds really cool. So it looks like Ariyon is based in Dallas, so she's joining us from Texas. Welcome to Nationally, Ariyon.
Yes, thank you.
Ariyon, we're so happy to have you here. So if you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself and where you're voting from, both, identity-wise and also physically.
Yeah. So I'm Ariyon Dailey. I currently reside in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a social producer for Reckon. So we do stories about the LGBTQ community. We do stories about climate change. We do stories about justice and Black joy. And so if there are any stories that anyone feels like can make a good video, I look at it, I read it, try and figure out what would work best for social. As far as how I'm voting, you already know how I'm voting for. I mean, look at me. Why would I vote otherwise? But honestly, I just want to vote for the person that's best for the job, someone who I can identify with, someone who cares about similar issues that I do. And no candidate is perfect, but I do think that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz has a really strong chance at being the best fit leaders of this country. Of course, I would prefer some tweaks to those policies and their stances on certain things, but they're definitely the best fit for the job versus the other guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Ariyon, so as a social media producer for Reckon News and someone who constantly have to keep their ear on the ground, where were you last night when you watched the debate?
I wish I wasn't watching the debate, but but because, watching news and consuming information is a big part of my life and my job, I was watching the debate. And honestly, when my team and I made the bingo card, and it was predominantly Abby Crane, she's an illustrator and editor for us at Reckon. She created the bingo card, and she kind of taps us for ideas or certain things to add to the card. But I was like, dang, I really didn't think I would use it, but it was used very quickly. Like, I was looking at my clock, and within the first 20 minutes, I was already crossing out stuff like, dang, they're really predictable. It's really crazy.
Okay, so for the people that don't have the bingo card in front of them or haven't taken a look at it, can you describe what this bingo card looks like and what are some of the spaces that fill it up?
Yes. So it's a 5x5 square, and it says presidential debate bingo. Some of the spaces are words or quotes, and then others are images. So, for example, we have to have the freebie in the middle. One of them says joy. So it's Kamala Harris laughing. And then there's another one with Donald Trump, and it says talk of crowd size, which they did debate about.
People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back.
There's another one with a couch, the whole JD Vance thing.
Yeah.
There's another one with a cat lady.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
And then the one that Abby, the one who illustrated the bingo card, she tapped me for, it is the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated crest, and it says Ski Wee, because that's the sorority that Kamala Harris is a part of. And so she was like, I have to have your permission to add it on the bingo card. So we did, and it was fun. But there's a lot of stuff on here, and pretty much I think anything except maybe the insect could be crossed off on this bingo card.
The flag that landed on Vice President Mike Pence in one of the debates. Yes, I mean, so you mentioned that within the 20 minutes you were already crossing stuff out. What were the 5 spaces that you first filled out on your bingo card?
Yeah, so I think the first one was illegals. It's Donald Trump loves to deflect and goes straight to illegal. I don't even like using that word, but he said it, right? January 6th was definitely brought up, the insurrection.
Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech.
Of course, Kamala's going to laugh and smile.
You talk about extreme.
And on the same row, I had a freebie. And then I also crossed out not a real answer, because the whole cats and dogs thing, you're being asked very specific questions and you're literally talking in circles. It's word salad at this point.
Let's pause at that one for a second. So you filled the space that said not a real answer when probably the moment that's making the most headlines today was that Trump claimed that migrants were eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your reaction to that moment?
What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Yeah, so it was specifically towards Haitian immigrants. And I think that's really important because a lot of the rhetoric he was spewing is just simply anti-Blackness, especially specifically for Haitians. That is a dog whistle. Obviously, it's stupid. It's dumb. The city, Springfield, Ohio was yeah, there's no proof of that. And even the moderator, he was yeah, we reached out to Ohio. They said that wasn't true. It's not. It's not.
Getting fact-checked on real time, that was incredible from their end. One of the talking points that stood out for me real quick is the fact that he didn't have an actual answer on how he would change or fix the Affordable Care Act. When asked, he basically just said, I don't have a plan, but we have certain, what was it? We have
concepts.
We have certain concepts of a plan. And it's like, okay, this guy has zero policies.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now.
He don't know what he's talking about. I mean, it's simple as that. And I'm still confused on why people are surprised. I think personally, I thought the bingo card was a great way to interact because it's like, you kind of already know what nonsense you're going to deal with, especially from Donald Trump. I think like with Kamala Harris, I think people were more interested in hearing her on a serious level. But we know Donald Trump was just going to pull stuff out of nowhere, like just talking, just running that mouth, not making any sense. So
yeah, I think that she was trying to, again, brand herself as a step forward, as the future. And, you know, Trump was more of the same, more of the past. But I also felt like there were some answers, at least, that Kamala didn't really define herself. For example, one of the moderators asked her about, I think, 3 things. But she said that she was going to go through the 3 of them and give a clear answer to each of those flip-flopping policies. But she only got to fracking. That's the only one that she clarified.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
I just wish they would drop the politician speak and the professionalism act because like Kamala was asked 3 things about her policies and why they were changed. I wish she would have just kept it real and been like, well, yes, I changed my mind. Instead of, you know, they're talking to citizens, they're talking to Americans like we're stupid. Girl, if you change your mind, you change your mind. Right. Donald Trump, if you don't know what you're talking about and you don't talk to your vice president, then just say that. And then again, what's funny is that Donald Trump began talking about immigrants seeking asylum or something of the sort. He genuinely thinks asylum means insane asylum. He doesn't know that there's 2 meanings to asylum. So it's just so funny. Like I had to explain that to my mom because I'm like, he's always going on about how insane people are coming to our country. And if you listen closely, you're just like, no, that's not what that means. And then he tried to come at Kamala talking about, I'm speaking.
In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Please remember that. And it was just like a girl, you thought you ate that moment like it didn't give like you thought. I'm just like, oh my God.
Ariyon, can you please talk about the faces? I love the facial expressions that she was making. That to me took the cake.
I did see Donald Trump get visibly upset. I felt like I could actually see him sweat a little more in this debate. Like the funniest part was when she was like, Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
That was funny because, you know, The Apprentice, he's a businessman and, you know, you're fired. Like, that's why I said earlier in this conversation, like, I want the professionalism act to drop. Like, at some point, I think Americans love the camaraderie of competition. So I'm just like, she should have just threw a jab. You know, I think she's trying to keep it very cutesy, very demure with her facial expressions.
Very demure, very mindful.
But I think that's just her being protective as a Black woman because, you know, Black women, Black people, people of color, we don't get second chances. We don't get to just pop up at the mouth and be a criminal and be ridiculous like Donald Trump. I can definitely understand why she would be a bit reserved with certain answers that she gives or how she speaks. Because, I mean, not only is she a politician, you know, all politicians talk like that. Although I want her to just, you know, cuss or, you know, say the thing that we all want to say, I definitely think they're going to be 10 times as more harsh on her than if Trump said it. And Trump has said some pretty ridiculous things, even during his presidency. And he still gets to get up there and act a fool.
I want to add that this is a very, very tight race right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she is a couple of numbers above Trump, but not enough numbers to have a landslide. So I think she's also very aware of that and might not want to scare those independent voters that she still needs to get to in order for her to win this presidency. So Donald Trump sees this as a Royal Rumble, right?
Yeah.
Like, he basically opened the doors for that. But Vice President Kamala Harris, that comes from the era of still having respectability, because to me, she held back so much. She was so respectful by making those faces that she was making, was, hinting at the audience that this guy is too much, right? She even, what did she say? This is extreme. This
Or
is
talk about extremity.
I get it. And as you mentioned, she kept it very demure.
Very demure, very mindful.
Like, she kept it like on point. And yes, we want to see that Kamala Harris that grilled the people when she was as a senator. We wanted to see that. And I think we sort of got a glimpse of that Kamala Harris.
I'm curious, Ariyon, I know that one of the spaces that you filled up in your bingo card was joy with Kamala's face on it. What was the moment that was giving joy for you? What was the moment that made you mark that space on your card?
It's like even when she wants to be serious, I think she's just a giggle box. And I think that's funny. But I also think, child, in this economy, somebody needs to laugh. We all need a good laugh and a good chuckle, especially when you're in a position as ridiculous as she is. Like, the difference is clear, but you're still having to compete. You're still having to shake his nasty hand. You're still having to sit and talk and argue with this person. So I can't recall the exact moment, but she was probably laughing at his stupidity at one point. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, there were many of those moments. And she and we caught her laughing at many of those moments. And frankly, in some moments, she seemed sort of sad at the unbelievable lies this guy was saying, right? Like, she pointed out his racism, right? She pointed out the park, the Central Park 5. Obviously, you pointed out right now the stuff that's happening in Springfield that was directed to Haitian migrants, right? So, it is something that she's very well aware of, his racism.
Yeah. And Donald Trump is not the brightest crayon in the box or a crayon in the box at all. I don't know what to call him, but he's not that smart. But I think he does understand that his audience feeds into xenophobia. And so the Haitian migrant eating cats and dogs is a dog whistle, is xenophobia, is gross. Instead of focusing on actual policy like his opponent, he's focusing on how can I instill fear in them so they can even say, we're not even going to listen to the policies. There's people eating cats and dogs, even though that's not true. And it's been proven to be false. Oh, yeah. The other thing about transgender illegal aliens.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this.
Whatever. Word salad. He's just pulling it. He pulled like 5 different things out of that junk box in his brain. He was just like transgender, illegal, aliens, like surgeries, prison. He was just grasping for straws. But back to my original point, I'm from Florida. There's a huge Haitian population, and Haitians face so much xenophobia anyways. They've done so much for Black people in general across the globe. And so for them to be facing this xenophobia now is very disappointing, as well as Venezuelan people. The neighborhood I live in Dallas is full of Venezuelan folks. And I know that because I see their flags. They're very proud people. And for Donald Trump to be like, oh, they're violent, they're crazy, they're coming and killing people. Where? My neighbors are Venezuelan. The people that I went to school with are Haitian. What are you talking about? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just spewing xenophobic, racist rhetoric. And I just...
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, that was definitely one of those moments in the debate that stood out. Obviously, like the hate towards undocumented immigrants.
So speaking of cats and dogs, segue to childless cat ladies, because right after the debate, Taylor Swift announced that she would be endorsing Kamala Harris, and she signed her letter, her Instagram post, as a childless cat lady. I did not expect her to do that last night.
That wasn't in my bingo cards either.
For real.
And we have some breaking news right now. Taylor Swift, and a picture of her and her cat. She has just posted that she watched the debate tonight and that she is endorsing Kamala Harris because, in her words, she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she is steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos. I was so heartened, Taylor Swift writes, and impressed by her selection of running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body for decades.
I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. No shade, no shade. Not a Taylor Swift fan. I thought it was a big deal too, because she definitely has influence over her fans and over her listeners. And so I think now more people might be encouraged to step in and vote for Kamala and Harris. I mean, there was already Swifties for Harris forming, but I think now that Taylor Swift has put her name on it, and shout out to all the childless cat ladies, because I'm one too. So, shout out to Taylor for shouting out the childless cat ladies. But I thought it was a huge deal, but it definitely wasn't on my bingo card either.
This was long awaited.
We had a Brad Summer with Charlie SGX and Kamala. So I guess we're just going to have a Swiftie fall. Well, thank you very much, Ariyon, for coming on to Nationally. We appreciate you and your bingo card. That was great, and please come back again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ariyon. Before you go, where can we find your work? How can we follow you?
Yes, thank you for asking. So you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Ariyon Dailey. That's ARIYONDAILEY. And you can find me on TikTok by typing in the Daily Tap In. Daily is spelled with an E, DAILEY.
Okay, we will be sure to tap in. Thank you so much, Ariyon.
Yes, thank you. And again, shout out to our illustrator, Abby Crane, for creating the bingo card, and the social team at Reckon for putting it all together. And thank you both for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Nationally Podcast, brought to you by Immigrantly Media.
We hope you liked this episode. Nationally releases weekly on Thursdays on all streaming platforms.
If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, please email them to us at info@immigrantlypod.com or reach to us on our socials at Immigrantly Media on Instagram and at Immigrantly_pod on X.
You can find me at Sofia Hanalei on all the socials.
And you can find me at JuanDR47 on all the socials.
Nationally is produced by Sadia Khan and me, Sofia Sanchez. I also wrote this episode.
Our sound designer and editor is Juan Velez. The Nationally theme music is by Simon Hutchinson. Additional music is by Epidemic Sound.
Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.
We'll see you next week.